up, everyone? It's John and Travis here for another intro to a fantastic episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. John, how was that?
I thought it was really good.
I thought that was phenomenal. I did not expect the interview to go like as in-depth and intellectual into the ideas of jiu-jitsu it is. We really talk a lot about belts in this podcast. Thinking about it now, we talk a lot about like promoting in jiu-jitsu and also kind of like the mindset behind jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, what the as far as what exactly he looks for as far as promotions and things like that. I thought it was really well. I thought he went really in depth on his answers, and I liked it. It gives you a lot to think about.
Yeah, he kind of joked about it and was like, "Oh man, I kind of give long-winded answers," and I was like, "This is great." No, I'm sure people at home are gonna love this. It was a really, really in depth with all of his stuff. No, it was really good. I enjoyed it. His name is Thomas Rudzinski. He is a third-degree black belt, and I don't know who he got his third degree under, but he's a third-degree black belt. Forgot to ask that. He started actually under Carlson Sr. in Chicago, which is a super interesting aspect of his story. Right, obviously, because that's back like in old school jiu-jitsu, straight like
over 20 years ago, I think.
20 years ago. And then he got his blue belt under Carlson actually too, which is super interesting. And I think anyone white to blue, maybe even early purple, will really get a lot out of this. We don't go too much in technique or theory of jiu-jitsu, but more along the lines of like relatability and how to get people through the tough times at the early stages to keep them training. That's really what a lot of this episode is about. And it was good, man. It was really good. His story is interesting. His answers are great. I definitely think everyone's going to have a lot to gain from this.
Especially his students. You better listen up.
Yeah, right. His students back. So
you're welcome.
But John, what's our beverage of the day today?
We got Screwball peanut butter whiskey. Let me see if I can put that up there for you.
Screwball. Delicious.
Delicious.
Really good. I thought it was going to be more of a peanut butter taste, but honestly, it's not.
It's perfect.
Yeah. The first glass was a little sweet.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know about this. And I was like, hey, can you pass the bottle again?
Yeah. What's the details on it, John?
Oh, let's see. Are there details? I don't know.
It's literally on the label at the bottom.
No, it is not. It's what are you talking about? Oh, 70 proof. Yep. 35% alcohol by volume.
Yeah. Delicious. It's great.
Probably
really smooth.
Probably why he butchers our name when he starts the podcast. You guys will hear it.
That's going to get edited out.
No, leave it in there. Leave it in there.
Why you keep hiding behind your mic guard, dude?
What are you talking about?
John's like, I don't want to talk right now.
What? Well, it used to be like you got to put your mouth right on the mic.
Yeah, now
so
we're trying to switch things. Now we're trying to switch things around, all right?
He's never happy.
Always trying to improve. But hey, guys, if you guys want to follow Thomas, everything's going to be down in the description below of the podcast notes or YouTube page. So follow him, listen to his podcast, ROL Radio. Him and his buddy Gary are both black belts, and they do a great podcast. I've listened to a couple of episodes already. Also, he puts instructionals out on ROL Academy's YouTube page and his academy's ROL Academy. And he's everywhere. So if you guys want to follow him, that stuff's there. Also, housekeeping notes for us, elbowstight.com. Elbows Tight Pod on Instagram and everything like that. And also, probably the most important part, we have patches now. If you guys want a patch, we will send you a patch 100% free of charge. All we ask for you is if you send us one of yours. If you want to buy them, let me know. I'll send you, they're going to be $12 a patch, But if you want one for free, just send us a patch, and I will have our P.O. box down in the description also if you want to send us, or you can hit us up on Instagram, and I'll give you the P.O. box so you guys can send us your academy. The ultimate goal is I want to have a bunch of patches behind us from all the people around the world that listen to this podcast. So once again, if you guys want a free patch, just go ahead and just mail us one. If you want to pay for one, even better, and we'll send it to you that way too. So, but without any further ado, thank you guys so much, and hopefully you enjoy this episode. We'll catch you later. Peace. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. It's your host, Elbows what?
Did you say pike?
Elbows Tight podcast with your host Travis and John. Maybe I'm already feeling this drink of the day for us. How you doing today, John?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. We have a very special guest today. We have a third-degree black belt, Thomas Rudzinski. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a blast to have a conversation with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to do this. Since we had so much time in between when we were able to do the podcast, did a little bit of research. John was able to do a little bit of research on you, and hopefully we can make it worth your while on your time.
Well,
so
hopefully you
thanks for joining us.
Because that would be
just a fluffy time.
Conversation.
Yeah. So, but without any further ado, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Thomas, if you can go ahead and give us a little background of yourself and how you got into jiu-jitsu and whatnot for the people at home.
Yeah, listen. So it's a long story how I got into jiu-jitsu, but who I am, I'm just another guy in Chicago area who just has a lot of passion for jiu-jitsu. I have the privilege to have my own academy at this point, and some students who love jiu-jitsu as well, and just like you guys, we engage on daily basis, and I kind of try to understand and explore this chaos of jiu-jitsu from technical perspective, from philosophy perspective, and we just kind of we hang out and we do this cool thing, and just like you guys. So I have the privilege to be on the other side, sharing some of the experiences that I've compiled. Oh, there was the drink that I have compiled over the last 20 plus years. And share it with the students on the mat, and then just like you guys, I have the privilege to hang out with you cool guys, and just create some of these engagements.
So let's go ahead and just kind of like jump it straight into how did you start jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting actually story. Going back and kind of framing this up, I was in corporate world. I was, climbing the corporate ladder like a lot of people out there these days. And my boss was doing jiu-jitsu, but framing this correctly, at that point of my life, I was not really into any type of activity. I called this a fluffy Thomas. There was a weight associated with it, and being very politically correct and not offending anybody. It's just physical exercise was not on my daily agenda. Let's just put it that way. Okay. I was in technology. I was geek. I was really trying to do the thing that everybody was doing and really kind of climb myself towards the career, but my boss, Eric, and shout out to Eric, very good friend of mine to this day. He was very persistent about, poking the bear. And he continuously, over a period of months, he was saying, look, check this out, just check. But he was smart enough to poke it and leave it, And at some point, it became really, really annoying. Like the guy you have who like keeps poking constantly, but he doesn't tell you anything about it. It was really, really annoying. And at some point, I finally was like, listen, I'll go, I'll see it, I'll do it. Just leave me alone. Okay. I don't want to hear this anymore. And so I did. And that was day one of completely new adventure, completely new life. From that point on, I was hooked. It was a healthy addiction. And, within the next year and a half, I went down from about 240 to about 170. As far as my weight is concerned, I really became really obsessed, really involved in the jiu-jitsu. And this is just the first year and a half, but I was hooked. And as I mentioned earlier, now I have the opportunity to make a similar impact on others, and have that impact on the students, and really allow them to start that journey and then continue that journey of exploration, because that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So your buddy Eric, or your boss Eric, what belt was he when he was convincing you? Was he a fresh blue belt? Because I know when I was a fresh blue belt, I was trying to get everyone in there.
I mean, we're still trying, right?
Yeah, we're still
we're that guy. We poke everyone.
Yeah, no, he was a blue belt. But you know what's funny? So this
Called
is,
it.
yep. No. But listen, this is the funny part of this, that you know, he came into work a couple hours earlier so he can go train during the lunch. Okay, but I recall, and he will deny this. He will. You should have him on the podcast just so he can tell you his story. But he denies this. But every time he passed by my desk, you know, he had his bag with a gi inside, but the belt was always sticking out. It's like he was rubbing it in.
Ah.
He was like rubbing it in every single time. But anyway, yeah, he was a blue belt, and he went through the ranks. And you know, now he's a black belt, and we have you know, we have the opportunity to train together, and what an amazing friendship and what an amazing story.
That's awesome. So the academy that you first started out at, is that the same academy that you were all the way under until you got your black belt?
You know, so it's interesting. It's interesting. Part of my journey, unlike many others out there, because of the circumstances of life, I didn't have privilege to continue with my original instructor. I started with Carlson Gracie Sr, and he passed away somewhere around my blue belt, mid blue belt or so. You know, and then, you know, other circumstances of my life, having kids and moving out to the suburbs, and kind of continue with their quote unquote life, you know, didn't allow me to travel over an hour to the academy and have that while other academies were closer. So that some of these shifts took place, you know, and some of these sacrifices, I had to make these tough decisions in order for me to continue jiu-jitsu. So, you know, to answer your question directly, no, I did not. However, you know, in my mind, it is all about the experience of the journey, right? So it's, you know, sometimes we have to make these tough decisions, and unfortunately, is not the desired point, but the end of it is, you know, if you have to choose between training or not training, you know, it's better to train. You can continue training, right? Sometimes we need to make these tough decisions through the life.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned sometimes you just got to train because COVID really put a hamper on a lot of people's training, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But we saw resilience in a lot of people with, you know, BJJ fanatics releasing free DVDs
Hmm.
so people can train at home, and then people buying mats. Like I have 2 mats in my garage that, you know, we would practice with, and then, you know, small group things of people that, you know, were being safe and whatnot. During the lockdown area, what was training looking like for you?
Yeah, it was tough. I'll tell you that. It's last year, beginning of last year, you know, we we as my academy, we made a decision to close down much earlier than what the official um, government regulations were. You know, and there was so much unknown at that point that we chose to cancel classes early on, and I think it was sometime in February, if I'm not mistaken. And we were closed for I think 3 or 4 months, if I'm recalling correctly. And you know, it's tough because we go from this you know, hands-on, person-to-person combat environment and a full mental and physical stimulation to this um, complete opposite, where you don't touch anybody, you cannot even interact with them. And yes, we were fortunate with doing things like Zoom classes and YouTube streaming videos, and you know, these opportunities that to connect with students, but none of that replaces what we are here to do. And I think I think in a retrospect, thinking back, I think jiu-jitsu is one of those activity, hobbies, sports, whatever you want to call it, but it's um one of those activities where it's almost impossible to do, you know, alone. You can drill, you can have a dummy, but none of that replaces the true training. You know, you know, online platforms like BJJ Fanatics and many others, we've done the same thing with ours. You know, fully accessible for no charge to anybody who wanted to get on it. You know, but none of that replaces it. So it, you know, it was a tough time for many students, and a lot of students obviously had to take breaks. Some of them didn't come back. But in fact, I personally know several academies who closed down and never returned. They simply, shut down permanently. And it was a tough time. But at the same time, I think when we, you know, it, whether you consider the pandemic over or not, we're gonna stay away from the political thing. But it's, looking hindsight, looking behind us at this point, I think it made us appreciate, at least in my case, it made me appreciate the jiu-jitsu training to what it really is. Often we take it for granted that we go to the academy 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The academy is actually available to us. That we have these friends, peers, training partners. I think last year really was eye-opening in that sense, where a simple phone call or a text message or, hey, listen, come on by and train. Like these things, I think, are magnified right now because of the circumstances we found ourselves in just last year. And I think as time goes on, we'll never forget it, but we kind of look it back, and we might be saying as, hey, do you remember that time when we couldn't train? Well, that sucked. Let's go train. And I tell my students, at least, use that as a motivation to get better. Use that as a motivation to continue studying jiu-jitsu. Don't allow that to overcome your life, and don't allow that to shut down the passion that you have, because that would be a shame.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to interview quite a few people during the pandemic, right, John?
Yeah, and I was in San Diego for a big chunk of it. Most of those places stayed open, and they kept rolling. So I was at least fortunate for that. But as far as impact, I don't know if we'll ever know how many people actually left jiu-jitsu and won't come back to it. Because it's hard, right? You go. If you get too big of a break in between, it's a challenge to get back into it.
I think that's one of the hardest things, and that's not only jiu-jitsu related. It's just sport related in general, because there is this adrenaline rush, there is this dopamine rush, that we get during these activities, and then we take a break, and it's very difficult to come back. And it's not that we don't want to. I think that's really important to remember. We want to come back, but often, and that's very visible with injuries, particularly. We want to come back. It's just our mindset is at the point where we left, but our body is probably 10 steps behind, especially with,
that's a great point,
especially with injuries. So I feel great. I'm recovered from the injury, from pandemic, whatever it is. And I step on the mat, but my mind is like, oh yeah, I could handle that guy. I could do this. I could do that. I could do flying triangles and all the other fancy stuff, right? I could bear and bowl around that guy 7 times and he couldn't even catch me, right? And then we start doing this, and like the physical the components that take place in our own body, that they're not the same, and then if so it happens that others train during the time that we are out, now that puts another layer of complexity, right? So what I often do with my students, I actually create a little consultation, if you will. It's like our goal is, after you return, to get you back to where you were, and then we need certain amount of time to get you there. So you cannot come into advanced class, even if you're a purple belt. Like it's not advised for you to come back into advanced class, because one, your body is not ready for it. It's just not. You mentally might be there, but you're physically not there. So there's this stepping stones to get there, and if you do follow that recipe, you will be back in just a month or 2 or 3, and then you golden, but last thing you want to do is get re-injured or setback in some capacity, and then you're gone again. And this is when people quit. It's not that they don't want to return. They do, just the return is so complex and difficult that it's it's hard. It's hard. Those things are just challenging.
No, I completely agree. That was, like John mentioned, we were fortunate enough to be able to continue to train through most of the pandemic because we weren't hit very hard. But that's not to say that some people didn't take precautions and stopped training, and we still haven't seen a couple people that didn't come back, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But what was those classes first like when you opened back up? Did you have to give like disclaimers to your students, like, hey, I know you guys are excited to get back into it, but like, let's take it a little bit easy. We're going to kind of go back over the basics. Like, what was your curriculum, and how did you like break it down for your students?
It was it was a very fine manipulation of um, satisfying the students and complying what was necessary and doing what was necessary to comply with the rules and regulations of the governing body at that time, right? And that's a very, very difficult task for any business owner and jiu-jitsu instructor. Because listen, despite what I think about pandemic, we're going to put all of that aside. There is a business that has to be run. There has to be bills that have to be paid. My landlord does not care if there's a pandemic or not. He wants to have his lease. The electrical company wants to get their check. Everything like these are the things that have to take place, and and then there's these governing bodies who put these rules around fitness, and then okay, let's be honest. Jiu-jitsu is probably the most physical contact as it possibly can be. Like it doesn't get more physical contact than jiu-jitsu, right? So
Right.
with situations like pandemic, when they tell you need to stay 6 feet apart, like we were joking about this. Like this is where,
Yeah.
where are all these guys who did touchless martial arts? Like they should be making
That's Tai
millions
Chi.
right
We're
now.
like,
I'm telling you, they should be making millions right now because this was ideal for them, right? But bringing it back to reality, jiu-jitsu is the worst example of that, right? So like how do you maneuver through these things? So we were very creative. We were trying to number one, we were extremely transparent with our students. We allow anybody who wants to cancel like that. This is their choice. We're not going to fight you. If you want to support, you want to support. If you want to come and train with the limitations that were around us, then let's go and train with limitations around us. And as time went on, we also start learning how the situation is and creating perspectives about what we really want to do and how do we manipulate the business to continue to sustain it open, to keep operational at the same time, to keep people healthy. So I think it was a huge learning curve from a business perspective. And again, doesn't matter whether I approve it or I disapprove of the pandemic or what are my thoughts about masks or vaccination. That goes regardless of this. You have, you have these situations, and I'm sure every business owner or every jiu-jitsu academy owner found themselves in this position. We had people canceling because, there was some people were pro pandemic and some was against pandemic, and people cancel for both reasons, and there's nothing I can do to solve the problem.
yeah.
It is you are caught between rock and a hard place. That's it. You're essentially trying to help people, and I think that those who took that approach, around the world, I think those are successful. Those are the ones who survive. Those are the ones who are continue operating, and those are the ones who probably now, when this pandemic is coming to the end or is ended, or however you look at it, probably now they have more traffic than they've ever had, and that's something that we are experiencing now. And this is this post-pandemic kind of environment. If you coped up in a house with your family, kids, wife, and everybody, you want to get out of there. I love my family, but I want to get out on the mat. Like I want to go and train, and
Yeah.
and I think this is something what we're experiencing right now, end of last year and beginning of this year and throughout this year. And it's like people want to get out. And if jiu-jitsu was planted a little seed in your head over last decade, this is the time when you try it because you finally can. And I think a lot of jiu-jitsu academy owners, a lot of instructors are experiencing higher traffic because of that. And hopefully they are taking advantage of it, and hopefully they are impacting these people in a very positive way.
Yeah, it is so interesting that you mention jiu-jitsu blowing up post-pandemic, because during one of our interviews with Jason Khalipa, he literally said that this was mid-pandemic that we interviewed him, and he said, I was like, so what do you see the jiu-jitsu going? He's like, I think after the pandemic, jiu-jitsu is going to be the highest it's probably ever been, because people are going to be locked up and they're going to think, oh man, I need to get in there. You know what I mean? Have you noticed our classes?
Our classes are they're huge now. I mean, they're full classes. The kids classes is unbelievable. They have even more than the adult class. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the classes are bigger now than a year and a half ago,
Yeah,
for sure.
and we are experiencing the same thing. It is, I mean, our kids classes are full capacity, literally. Like I have to turn,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have
I
to
think there's a
turn
waiting
people
list.
away. Yeah, there's a waiting
Yeah.
list, and so that's a problem of its own. You know what I mean? And then you have classes where it's literally full capacity. Like we have so many bodies on the mat, there's no room to roll. Like and so imagine this going from this black to the white or white to black situations. Like these are these extremes. One, you can't be open. Two, you you're blowing up. I mean, these are all challenges,
You can't keep up with business.
right? Right. And like everybody says, oh, there's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. You still need to solve it. You know what I mean? So, um, listen, don't take me wrong. I am not complaining. I love my job. I love what I do. But these are all challenges that we face during difficult and unprecedented times like last year. And just it is what it is. I can only control so much. And this is why I often compare this to jiu-jitsu. You can only control so much. You can only control what you do, right? And jiu-jitsu is so much like it. If I'm passing a guard or I'm controlling my opponent, my partner, I can only do what I can. I cannot manipulate their mind. I can ask them, hey, listen, can I submit you right now? And I'm yet to find a partner who's going to, yeah, go for it, man. But we can only so much. We can only control what we can, and the rest of it's completely out of our control. That's the other 50%. That's our partner. And we just need to manipulate within the situation, make the best out of it, and then find the best path of the least resistance to the goal that we desire. And that is the complexity of jiu-jitsu and then life.
Yeah, so when you were coming up, it's kind of a two-part question. Did you ever, one, think that you were going to be a black belt, let alone a third-degree black belt? And then two, did you ever consider that you were going to open your own academy? And, your Instagram shows that you had like 50 people in the class the other night. Like it was like, obviously, you just mentioned it's booming right now. A good but bad problem to have. Did you ever expect that you would be at this point in your jiu-jitsu journey? When you first started?
No, matter of fact, I think many practitioners, many students, instructors who have started, 2 decades ago, they will tell you this, that I remember being told flat out, you will never be a black belt. You will never
Oh,
get
wow.
there. You will never get there, and there were multiple components. One, you're not tough enough, you're not skilled enough. But two, there was this back then, and again, I'm going to frame this in a politically correct statement because people will get pissed off, okay? But it was literally Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There was no Americans teaching jiu-jitsu back then when I started. I keep in mind, I started with Carlson Gracie Sr. Like it doesn't get closer to the source. The guy didn't speak English. There was 20 words that he spoke. That's all, right? So there was a very different situation, very different environment that we find ourselves today. But yeah, we were told flat out. I was told flat out, you will never be a black belt. You'll never get to that. Might as well quit right now. And that was the attitude. It was for the tough guy. It was for the fighter. It was for somebody who can overcome all of these challenges. So, was I hoping? Was it my dream? Yeah, absolutely. You looked up to these guys. You walked into that room and he sat across the room and you were like, oh man, it's so cool to just do nothing all day, go do some jujitsu, talk to people. I mean, that's an amazing job, But yeah, I think all through the journey, through the years, as all of this continued evolving, as the world continued changing, things like YouTube coming up and internet, I mean, think about it. You're like, I sound crazy right now, but I'm talking 20 plus years ago. There was no YouTube. There was no BJJ
No.
fanatics. And I know some guys like listening right now and they're scratching their heads and it's like, what did the world look like pre BJJ fanatics?
So when I tell my kids, we didn't have cell phones. There was no cell phones when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's like, you know, by the way, speaking of cell phones, remember the flip phones? Like that was the coolest thing. Like
Yeah,
I,
we
I
were just
remember
talking.
beepers. I remember when I had a beeper and I had a cool chain for it.
Yeah, I always wanted a beeper. Just throwing that out there. I was like, Dad, can I get a beeper? He's like, you don't need a beeper. I was like, I don't need a beeper. My first phone, sidetrack. My first phone was the Nokia brick. That when it like vibrated, it felt like it was going to cut your leg in half. Now I'm always checking my phone because I think I feel it vibrating. You know what I mean? Like, we were literally just talking about T9, about how revolutionary T9 was. It's like, you remember when you didn't have to click 3 times to get to E? That was great.
I mean, some of the stories that we can tell is ridiculous. Like I remember one of my first cell phones I had, deviating from the serious story here, but one of the first cell phones was if there was an incoming call, first minute was free. So guess what I did?
Oh, wow.
Guess what I did? I literally timed
hang
it.
up 58 seconds.
I timed it. 59. Boom. I don't care if you were talking. Boom. You can call me back if you were. I'm gone.
If it's important.
Hurry up, 30 seconds left. Go.
It's so funny you mentioned that because we have a guy that we work with, and back when it was collect calls, you could get the collect call for free by just hearing who it was, and you can deny the charges. And he would call his mom collect on the payphone, and he'd say, "Hey, Mom, done with football practice, pick me up." And he would hang up, and so she would hear, "Hey, Mom, done with football practice, pick me up." So,
I mean,
those are back in the day, man. 10-10-220, all for all your collect calls.
Like I even remember, like when I got my first beeper, like we were establishing all these codes with the friends. You send me, 3, 2, 1, blah blah blah. Like it was like a language of its own. I know the new people who are listening to it right now, they don't even know what I'm talking. They don't know what a beeper is. But
right.
But listen, life was different back then. That's the bottom line, and as life continue evolving over time, one, jiu-jitsu as a sport, as activity, as a hobby, continue maturing, continue getting better, continue evolving, and I think now we are in a phenomenal position as one, academies and jiu-jitsu more accessible than ever. It's more accessible than ever. I don't care what anybody thinks. It's like more accessible than ever. You can get your phone. You can watch anything that you want. Anything. And a matter of fact, my argument is you can watch it for free. It's like YouTube is freaking gazillion of videos. You can find anything, right? If you want to pay for it, that's even better. But it's accessible, And academies are in any major city in the United States and then around the world. I mean, there's only certain parts of the world that jiu-jitsu doesn't exist in, and that is changing daily. I mean, it could not be a more exciting time for jiu-jitsu than we find ourselves today. So it continues evolving. So as we were getting closer to today, where we find ourselves today, thoughts start, raising up in my head. What if, someday I'm going to be a black belt? These doors start opening up, and you start getting more geeky about it, and you start creating, you start becoming this leader, whether you like it or not. People look up to you. You walk into the room full of white belts and you're purple or you're blue. They look at you. Who's that guy?
Yeah.
And it happens all the time. So you do become a leader. The question is, are you ready to be a leader? That's the question. And so, to answer your question more directly, I talk too much. I always say this. You got to stop me.
No, it's great content. I'm
it's
like,
good for a podcast.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, this is great. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, we're going to turn this into content.
I'm just trying to remember my question for you. I'm like, don't forget my question. Don't forget my question.
You got to write it down. Like,
you guys should have like little light in the corner or something, like blanket. Stop talking. Stop talking. Stop talking. But
we're gonna have the music come on. It's like, all right, Tom, let's go ahead and finish this question up.
But I tell my students all the time, I talk too much. Like, and you need to stop me. You need to literally stop me. Right. But anyway, I mean, at some point, the idea of teaching start surfacing in my mind, and so it happened that I was fortunate enough with my life aligned in a way where I was able to convert my corporate life, corporate job, corporate career into a full-time instructor. I mean, that was one of the most amazing days in my life, and it took a lot of effort, a lot of support, a lot of sacrifices. But I'll tell you, somebody asked me actually recently, a couple of weeks ago, one of my students asked me, is like, would you ever go back? Like, if the like pandemic go high wire, and like you had to close the academy, would you ever go back? I was like, two problems with what you asked. One, My academy never is going down over my dead body. That's never happening. Okay, like I would go nuts without, you know. But two, no, I would never go back. I would not. You know, and it's there is for multiple reasons, but there's something really satisfying about doing what I do, and I love it. I would never change it.
Thomas, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
How
That's
do
a good
you
thing because he's on a podcast with us.
how do you go about promotions in your academy? Is it like a test? Is it something you just see, or is it at 6 months you test for this? I'm just curious because or a couple years I've seen probably 3 or 4 promotions. They've always been different every time. So I'm just curious how about you go about doing it in
You're
yours?
gonna put me on a spot like that, right? Like the most
All your
controversial.
white belts are listening,
Yeah, I
taking
know,
notes.
right? The most controversial question in jiu-jitsu period.
I gotta ask the hard question.
Got to ask the hard
You
questions.
know,
Man.
listen, no, I appreciate hard question. I do it unorthodox. Okay, more you smile, faster you get your black belt. Okay.
Yeah, we'll be black belts already.
No, listen, it is a controversial topic for a reason. And you know, I'm gonna give you the typical Thomas-like answer, which you know is gonna be long, and I'm gonna make you confused, and I will never answer the question. But the point here is this: it's jiu-jitsu is almost impossible to measure. It is very difficult and challenging to measure, and there's few components behind this. And then I'll answer your question. But this is kind of pre-framing what the reasoning is in my mind.
Perfect.
I like it.
Yeah, it's very difficult to measure for few reasons. One, we are all different ages. Jiu-jitsu is accessible to people from literally 3 years old to 90. Okay, and the components of our body are going to be very different. You can't compare the 20-year-old wrestler or grappler with the 55-year-old retiree. You can't. It's impossible. You can't. You would not be doing justice to either one of them. So that's one. So the physical component of jiu-jitsu is very present. Two is our brains. I think jiu-jitsu is more mentally stimulating than physically stimulating. It's like continuous troubleshooting. You continuously troubleshooting moving target, and it's very difficult. Our brains work differently, and while all of this is unfolding, there is the skill set component which falls in somewhere in the middle. Meaning, how do we retain the information, and how do we execute the information? But between those three, it's almost impossible to measure how well one is doing. The only true way to measure that is to compare yourself to the past, meaning to the version in the past, right? How much progress have you made in the last 12 months? That's a true component. Because even if you take competitors, which often is you know, a measuring stick, if you will, or a measuring some kind of measurement, you know, oh, he won worlds, he won Pan Ams, but all that is, and it's a great achievement. I'm not taking that away from anybody, but how is that measuring his progress? Right? Having 70 guys in a division and being fully stacked is one thing, but showing up and having only 10 guys and there are all the top guys that didn't show up, well, how is that a measuring? Right? So all these components are vary based on the situations we find ourselves. And I want to make it clear because I know there'll be criticisms around this, right? Gold medals are beautiful. They are beautiful. They show us the result of winning a competition, but that competition took place at this time, at this place, with the people who were there, right? It doesn't compare us to jiu-jitsu, and that is the important component to really keep in mind as we talk about competition. So how do I promote? There's few components behind it. One is definitely attendance and effort. I mean, that's a first one that needs to be talked about. Somebody, and I'm not talking about how much you attend. I'm talking about consistency of attendance. That's a big difference. Somebody who attends one time, then will come in 5 times next week, and then disappear for 3 weeks, and then will show up 4 times. That's a very inconsistent training pattern versus somebody who will come in 3 times a week and he will be consistent 3 times a week across the year. And see, they might have the same attendance as a total per year, but the consistency is very different. So I look at that as an instructor. How consistent are you? 2, I really look at the progression that you are making. So in my mind, each belt is like a segment, is like a sprint, is like a box, which you need to achieve as a student. You should be achieving certain goals, and it's not necessarily the amount of techniques that you know, but how do you comprehend the techniques? In a white belt, we are often getting smashed. We are often getting destroyed, and we feel powerless. But how do you accept this? How do you solve the problem of continuously getting destroyed? Well, that's a big question. One is going to be pissed off and is going to walk away, throw the belt, throw the gi, and the other one's going to start scratching his head, and a third one is going to go and do 3-hour research on BJJ fanatics. And I was like, hold on a minute, what is going on here, right?
How do I stop this?
Right, and there are 3 different people,
Yeah.
and he still might not be able to stop it. But the point is, he is thinking about it. So that's a big component. And 3 is, how do you make a progression with your skill? In the circumstances that you find yourself in. So I'll give you an example. I have a special needs student in my adult class, and I had a conversation with his dad. This gentleman, the son is 18 years old, and I had a conversation with his dad a few years back when he came into the academy. And his dad told me, listen, I don't want you to treat him specially. I want you to treat him like any other student. And I was rather, whoa, wait a minute. Like, that's impossible. How am I supposed to treat him? And that was there was a lot of chaos in my mind. I was like, okay, well, let's go with this. Let's treat him like a special student. And that's how I treat him the entire time. And recently, after a few years, he finally got his blue belt, and it was a very emotional moment. And the truth is that, a lot of people might destroy him from a physical perspective. But I'll tell you, first of all, the guy is the biggest trash talker on the mat. The biggest trash talker.
I love it.
Remind me, I'm going to tell you a story when he got promoted in a moment. But 2, like, I can tell that his wheels are spinning, and he knows what to do. He just might not be able to do it because of the limitations that he's facing in his world. So the bottom line is, a long time ago, Carlson Gracie Sr., and this was about 6 months before his departure, he told me, not everybody is going to be a world champion. Remember that. And that stuck with me for 20 years. And that is important to keep in mind as an instructor. So, again, like I said, in a typical Thomas-like fashion, I didn't answering your question. But I think there's multiple components to the promotion in general. I think, you have to really understand the student. You really have to understand it. And the goal is for them to really continue growing, continue understanding, continue comprehending jiu-jitsu, continue learning jiu-jitsu, continue staying hungry for jiu-jitsu. That once we achieve that, then life is good.
So you in that fantastic answer. I enjoyed that very much. So don't be self-conscious about it, Thomas. That was great. But in that answer, you mentioned competing, and you mentioned that it doesn't hold all the weight. But if a person consistently competes, and then you can see like they're winning tournament after tournament, do you hold any weight to that? Like a little bit more than the person that's being more consistent? Like how much on your scale do you hold if a person competes often and wins or loses?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, right? And I think a lot of instructors find themselves in this position where they have to juggle these mental points of how do you reward these guys, how do you motivate them, and so on. Because we got to keep in mind that belts are not only a reward, they are also a motivating factor. Like, that's very important to remember too. Like, once you get that blue, purple, brown belt, whatever it is around your waist, a lot of students think, wait a minute, now everything changed. Well, did it really? Nothing really changed. You just got a new color around your waist, but yet we feel that pressure. So it is a motivating factor. But to answer your question, yes, of course it has some impact on it. But I also look at what competitions you do. If you go to Worlds, that's a different. You are blue belt at Worlds, you have probably between 70 to 120 people in a division. You place in that division, Oh, you get to quarterfinals in the division. Damn, I mean, you've done something, you know. But then again, I'm just saying, you go to a local tournament that has 6 guys and you win a gold medal. I mean, listen, I'm not taking away from the gold medal. All I'm saying, the effort to take the gold medal is much different than getting, you know, in the quarterfinals at Worlds. Those are the big components. Like all this has to be taken under consideration, which creates a moving target, and that is what is difficult. At the same time, you know, if you are an active competitor, I have to acknowledge this. I have to acknowledge that the fact that you compete, you do well, and if you so, then there should be a conversation about you being promoted. There should be a conversation about your goals. You know, and big part of what I do with my students, you know, it's very easy to kind of identify the goals, the high level goals for the students. You know, you have the 50-year-old retiree or 70-year-old retiree coming to academy. You know, he might be competing, but the competition is not his goal. You know, he wants to disconnect. He wants to move around. He wants to have good time. He wants to learn something new, stimulate himself. And then you have a 20-year-old coming in and who maybe has some wrestling or grappling background. You know, he's very eager. There's a lot of, you know, it's highly, what is it?
No, we're just laughing at you. When you say
Whenever
give
you
this story, we're like,
this.
I'm seeing people in my head. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, you're getting it. You got it.
Yeah, like you're like popping, like I'm like, oh, I know exactly who I can relate that to. I know exactly who you can relate
I think
that
every
to.
academy has that, right? It's like all these
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
demographics, the demographic in jiu-jitsu is so wide that you see all these different professions and ages and all throughout, right? And genders and so on. So see, now you distracted me. Damn it, I lost my train of thought.
No, so we're talking about so having the conversation if they do compete a lot, and then you know how much weight each competition has.
Right. So that happens on a regular basis, you know, because students come up to me and say, hey, listen, I want to challenge myself. I want to do this competition, blah, blah, blah. You know, and my thought is, well, what's your goal? You know, why do you want to compete? You know, and say, well, you know, this is something I want to do. I'm going to get into this. I want to push myself, blah, blah, blah. Then I'll say, well, listen, do this one. Maybe don't do this one. This might be a waste of money, a waste of time. Take a look at this. How are we looking from budgetary perspective? Because doing 3 local tournaments might be okay, but going to Worlds and having the same price might be another. You know, so some of these conversations should be taking place, you know, within the student base and instructor having a deeper understanding what is the goal of the student. I think it plays a significant role in a student's success. You know, and if so it happens that student is successful, so it happens that the student performs above and beyond what's expected of him, you know, I think that conversation of them getting promoted, you know, should be happening. You know, but at the same time, like, I'm going to challenge all of this with the fact of there's plenty of guys who have wrestling experience, but they don't know jiu-jitsu. And they will go to competition. They will demolish all the competitors. Do they deserve to be promoted? I mean, I don't know. I'll leave that kind of open question and let, you know, everybody decide on this. But the question is, do they know jiu-jitsu? Because belts are for jiu-jitsu. The promotion is for jiu-jitsu. So it is a moving target. It's not so black and white as I think some might, at least in my mind. There's a lot of fog, a lot of spaghetti in my mind. Like there's a lot of chaos in there. So anyway, you're getting like a glimpse of it.
Well, you know, I was going to say one thing I like about competition is I feel like for those that want to compete, it gives them the opportunity to compete against someone that's their age and their weight class,
Yes.
which they might not get in their gym.
Yes.
So I feel like, you know, that's a good thing, you know. I mean, honestly, it's pretty hard to find that, at least in our gym.
Well,
yeah, like
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say is, yeah, so like in our, like John is the only person his size in our school, and then we have a single guy that's in, or 2 guys that are in their 50s, right? But one's a higher belt than the other, you know what I mean? So they're like you have not only the skill gap, but you also have like age, size, all this come into play when it's in, to your point, when it comes into just rolling in class. But I think it kind of honestly helps when it does go.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Well, so
there's like a, go ahead.
You can look at the competition as a midterm, you know, but that has nothing to do with promotions, right? So competition is a very healthy way of testing your skill and your mindset and your approach. to jiu-jitsu with somebody who you've never met, or you have minimal contact or minimal training capabilities, right? And that really puts you on a midterm level, meaning you're going to test yourself. You got to test your mindset. You got to definitely test your stress levels. You got to how are you going to react under pressure? What's your troubleshooting like? What's your strategy like? I mean, maybe strategy is very, weak statement, but you still have a strategy. Everybody has a strategy as they go in. They know what they want to do. How did you execute on what you want to do, right? But kind of pivoting that to what we were talking about a minute ago, does that have anything to do with belts? Well, I don't know. That's, for everybody to decide, right?
Well, it's funny because one of our buddies, he just went and did a class at a local gym, and he felt like he did really well. He went in, he felt he got a lot of submissions. He felt great, and he was happy when he came back to the class. But then he's in our class, and he's like, I can't win here. It's like, you guys smash. Like, he doesn't feel like he has the success in our school. He goes to a different school. He feels like he has great success. And when I talk to him, I'm like, man, I wish you'd just go compete at least once. Because I feel like, when you train with the same people over and over and over again, their game, what they go to, so when they go try something new, their opponent doesn't know that. And I think that's why they get a lot of success that way. It's interesting.
I agree 100%, and training with the same minds, same bodies, it definitely gives us a perspective of knowing who those people are, especially when you like talk trash to them and you piss them off, like you just talk and just annoy them, I mean, but we definitely get to know each other. I mean, I know that myself, I'll go with this individual's like, I'm not pulling out with that guy. No way. Here
Yeah.
I'm staying on top. Here I'm going deep inside because I know I'm going to sweep them. So, again, this is the component of strategy, right? We're making intelligent decisions based on what we have presented in front of us to achieve the goal that we're trying to reach. So, and that really doesn't exist, especially in the local tournaments. If the data, by data, I mean videos or previous results are not available, right? So that's why I treat this as a midterm. This is a platform to really test yourself, against individuals who are your age, your weight, and your skill set, in those brackets, and that's a phenomenal way to really see where you are with the skill set of jiu-jitsu, So I always encourage individuals to do it at least once. Just do it one time. It's not for everybody. It's not, but do it once and do it early on. Don't wait until you're purple belt. That's hard. Do it when you're a white belt. Do it when you're starting. First 6 months, 8 months, 10, whatever it is. First year, do it. Go do it. What do you have to lose? Nothing. How about your ice cream if you lose? You're fine.
So, we have a couple people in our school that have kind of been in our school since the beginning of our opening. Our school has only been open for what?
3.5, 4 years
Yeah,
now.
3.5, 4 years. And John and I were literally like day one students in it because our buddy owns it. But we have a lot of friends. Yeah, right. We have a lot of friends that have been doing it with us since we started, but because of inconsistencies in their training, they've had to take some breaks. They've gone through some injuries. We've gone through 3 different black belts in our school alone. So our lineage is, I don't even know if we have a lineage. No offense to if our professor's listening to this, but and we have people that are still white belts.
Next time you show up.
Yeah, I'm getting smashed, right?
There's nothing to do.
But all this to say, we have people in our class that are still white belts or, no stripe blue belts. And they have to feel unmotivated sometimes. How would you convince, or what would you tell these people to like stick with it? Like, look, when you'll get it. Like, how do you continue to get these people to show up to class, even though it's been years as a white belt? It's been years.
It is tough because it's like restarting over and over.
Every time we get a new instructor,
again.
it's literally like our professor Sean. He's a Carlson Gracie black belt, and he came in. He's like, don't even think about promotions for at least 6 months to a year. Like, I got to see how you guys roll, and so people that were like right on the brink of a blue belt, now they're kind of like starting all over again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? How do you keep those kind of people motivated?
Yeah, it's hard. So these are hard situations, right? I think jiu-jitsu is complex enough when you have consistency, let alone if you introduce some of these extra components, which what you guys are talking about. I think what is really, really important in jiu-jitsu is understanding why things work the way they do. And in my philosophy, and this is my personal philosophy on jiu-jitsu, that jiu-jitsu is easy. Jiu-jitsu is not difficult. It really isn't. Jiu-jitsu is complex, but it's not difficult. And these are two different words. They have a very different meaning. There's a lot of layers to jiu-jitsu, but it's not difficult to do if you understand how it works. Understanding how jiu-jitsu works, that requires effort, that requires sacrifices, that requires a lot of time, and that is what's complex. So the jiu-jitsu itself, it's not complex. Is what we need to do to learn jiu-jitsu is showing up every single day, coming in and putting time in. Getting smashed, that sucks. Dealing with the consequence of getting smashed, that is complex, right? So for individuals who hit, the what they call that plateau,
Yeah.
I flatlined, I've been in the same spot for 6 months, and I think I'm pretty confident that most of the instructor will tell you that you are not flatlining, you are not plateauing. Okay, it is plateau. I think it's a very mind-oriented vision in our minds of where we want to be versus where we are. Let me rephrase: where we want to be and a perception of where we are, and that is very difficult to maneuver within these points. I think if you are consistent, and something what we talked about earlier, is not how many times you come, but how consistent you are. If you are consistent in training, if you put effort into education, and that is a big word, is not showing up to the class, chit-chatting with your buddies, having a couple jokes and bearing bolo for 5 minutes, is actually putting education into play, understanding how jiu-jitsu works, understanding how this bolo works, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with bolo, but understand how it works. That is education. If you do that consistently, you're not plateauing. You're not. But setting unreasonable expectations of yourself is number one reason why people quit, in my opinion. It's not that, I'm getting smashed. You're going to get smashed until you're a black belt. And you're getting your black belt, you're going to smash even twice more because nobody will care. I mean, that's the reality. You're going to get smashed all the time. But the point is, how are you addressing these situations? How are you continue educating yourself? How are you continue growing? That is the big question. Now, if you introduce things like having a new instructor every so often and new leadership in a class, which, we all people, instructors are people too. No, we are not Superman. We're not Spider-Man. We have feelings too. It is what it is. But it introduces a new dynamic, new culture. Things change a little bit. You got to give these guys, these instructors, a chance too. They want to evaluate the situation. They want to see, are you really where you should be? Because maybe you should be up, or maybe we need to work on to get you where you are, that rank, and a good instructor will do that. And a good instructor will communicate that. A good instructor is going to be very transparent about their intentions. Some of the things that I do with my students is anytime you get a 4 stripes on anything, or you get close, forget about the stripes for a moment. Maybe you get close to the promotion. Like, I feel that you're right there. You're at the brink. You're right there. You're about to hop over to the new color. The lavender's coming. That chocolate is right around the corner. This is where a conversation would be taking place. Not that you're getting a belt. It's like, this is what I expect of that belt. Are you ready? Are you where you think that you need to be to receive that? Because I think a belt is a very heavy responsibility, regardless of the color. there is a responsibility behind it. And I think students should take accountability for what their action and what they do. And darker the belt gets, more responsibility, more skill, more accountability for their action, and so on. But I think these conversations should be taking place. This should be more transparent. And they still don't know when they're going to get it. It's still a surprise. It's still emotional. But the point is that they are mentally ready for the steps that are necessary to achieve those goals. So I know, again, I didn't answer your question. I know.
No, that's good. And our professor now, I mean, he's been clear, if whatever he told everyone, regardless of what color your belt is now, if he doesn't feel like, you're at that level, you're just going to stay at that level until you meet the expectation, and I think that's fine. And that's fair.
Yeah, and I think that should be communicated back to the students. And listen, we as instructors we have different expectations too, and that's important to understand. And that's what I mean. We are humans, our perception, of students is a certain way. And if a new person comes in from a different environment with a different skill set, with a different goal, their expectations are going to be very different of the same students. So communicating that to those students is important. Hey, Johnny, listen, I know this is what you have, but I really want you to be successful at this. Let's sit down. Let me give you some homework. Why don't you watch these videos? Work on this. Narrow the focus. Okay, maybe flying triangles are just not the thing that we should be focusing on. Why don't we focus on the cross choke? Or maybe, hey, listen, you want to compete 10 times next year? Or you want to go to Worlds next year? Well, that means that you need to compete X amount of times to get ready for Worlds. These conversations have to take place. It needs to be transparent both ways. It's not one street. It's not one-way street. It's not students performs and gets rewarded. No, I'm a strong believer of instructors playing an active role in a student success. Now, don't take me wrong. Students is doing all the work, but the instructor plays a significant role in their success.
So to kind of go to belt promotions kind of thing too, this kind of goes hand in hand. I was reading Roy Dean's book, Becoming the Black Belt, and one thing that he mentions is back in the day when you got your blue belt from someone, then it was kind of a thing to switch academies. The question is how do you view loyalty in your students? Do you understand that, yes, it is transactional, right? They're paying you for a service, but also you're passing knowledge on, and there's still that connection of like, hey, like I'm teaching you, you are my student. Like where do you draw the line, or is that line gray? Is it blurry? Like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's definitely, that's one of the one of the big topics on today's jiu-jitsu, right? The loyalty and traders and how do you treat the clients, and don't talk to these guys because they are from different team. And I can definitely see the benefits of having some of these strong rules. I can see how some people might view it that way. But end of the day, why do we do this? We do this to learn jiu-jitsu. We do this to have fun. We do this to create relationships, and we do this to explore this beautiful art that is having a tremendous impact on our life on and off the mat, right? So we have to acknowledge the fact the academy might not be the ideal place for that person. And we have to acknowledge the fact that people have a choice. Okay, it's in a way, saying that somebody cannot go train somewhere else. It might be similar to saying, well, you can't drink Dunkin' Donuts. You only can drink Starbucks because you bought it yesterday. I mean, and this is where we're getting into this transactional part of jiu-jitsu, right? So at one point, or at one side, I do see how some might say, well, don't train with these guys because we compete with these guys all the time and they are our rivalry in a way. And I can see that, but at the same time, if somebody is paying a bill to your academy, can you really force them not to go somewhere else? Because ultimately, what are you going to do? You're going to kick them out, and then they are not paying you, which what you were seeking for them to do anyway. So it is a very catch-22 in a way situation for some of the business owners. I think a lot of it comes down to a confidence and insecurities in the business owners and in the instructors. Because in my mind, at least, if I do a good job as an instructor. If I provide a safe and clean and healthy environment for people to explore jiu-jitsu, why would they go train somewhere else? And if they do go train somewhere else, it's going to be a temporary. And I personally encourage students go and train, go and train, and bring something back. Teach me something. Teach me something. Whatever they do, bring it here because I want to get better. And I consider myself as a student of the art. So I want to get better. I want to continue progressing. Now I can see if somebody would come in from different academy and say, "Hey, listen, we got better times. Our open training is 3 minutes longer, and you can get one more extra round." And, you know, I can see that as being a conflict of interest from a business perspective, recruiting other students. But I got plenty of friends who are not part of the same team. I got plenty of friends who literally, in some circumstances might see as a conflict, and they train together because in my mind, we are beyond that. I think a lot of this is sourcing from Brazil, where there were a handful of teams, and the rivalry between the teams was extremely strong, and that converted to United States because the instructors came here. But the culture here in the United States is slightly different. We are very market driven, we are very client driven, and it is a business. And if you look at it from that perspective, I think it's difficult to ask somebody not to go train somewhere else if they can simply cancel and go train there anyway. So I don't know.
I'm laughing when you said times. Times are a big deal. Times are like, man, is there somebody that has a class at like 3 o'clock versus 6 o'clock? That's a big thing.
Listen,
now.
Jokes aside, but I'll tell you, a schedule is the number one conflict
Yeah.
every jiu-jitsu
absolutely.
academy. For every jiu-jitsu academy. It happens all the time where, my staff tells me, my general manager tells me, is like, oh, listen, this guy, blah, blah, blah. And, he would come if there was a, 4:30 a.m. class. And I'm like, I'm not getting up at freaking 4:30 to teach that. I'm sorry, but so and this is, I think, what's important for students. For somebody who is seeking an academy or doing research on an academy, this is something that is extremely important to identify. What is their schedule? That should be number one. Number one. Because if the schedule doesn't work, it doesn't matter how amazing the instructor is. Right? So, and two would be the culture. Would be how are these guys? Are they going to hurt me? Because I have to get up and I have to go, I'm a doctor and I have to go to the hospital next morning? Or are they going to, those are two big components, schedule and the culture. Once you get over those two obstacles or those two questions, then you can start getting into the secondary things. How are the instructions? How many classes are there? How many people are in the class? What programs do they have? Do they have judo? Do they have striking? Do they have a ground and pound? Whatever interests you, what they offer. But those first two is always schedule and the culture within the academy.
Yeah, and I definitely you kind of alluded to it. I definitely feel like it's from like social media and post and like watching videos on Professor YouTube. It definitely feels like it is the older generation that feels, it should be a certain way, you know what I mean, with loyalty and whatnot. But like you mentioned, you growing up under Carlson Gracie Jr. or Senior, and then etiquette being a certain way, right? Because he was, like you mentioned, like it doesn't get much like fresher of jiu-jitsu, right? Like he was like right there at the infancy. So what are some etiquettes that you still uphold? Like for me, I tie my belt, I turn my back to the instructor when I tie my belt, bowing on and off the mat. We stand in a line and then shake each other's hands in a line after class. What are some etiquettes that you still hold to this day, and what are some that you might not fall into line with the culture of jiu-jitsu, that you kind of just go your own way, like I kind of want to do this with my academy?
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of that goes into that quote unquote culture of the academy, right? What do you do? What some of those historical things that you continue passing on, and how do you evolve while the jiu-jitsu continues evolving around us, right? So, we don't do all of them. We don't, and some of them have been removed by choice. Some of them have kind of disappeared, if you will, over time, but we do line up. We do line up. We do bow in at beginning and end of the class. I find that as not necessary, I think as a sign of respect, but it's more of a reminder how the history of the martial art. This is not an activity; it's an academy. I treat my academy as academy. It's not a gym. It's not a place to hang out. It's an academy, and bowing in, bowing out is one of those signs of keeping it that way. It only happens in martial arts. It doesn't happen in wrestling, and many consider wrestling not being a martial arts, more of a sport. So again, I'll let other. Never mind. Forget. I shouldn't have gone, because now you just lost all the wrestlers who are listening. Okay,
They're like, all right, we're gonna go to the next podcast.
They are gone. They're not getting them back. But anyway, you know what I mean by that, and obviously having clean uniforms, having a respect for your belt. I mean, those are huge for me. And sometimes you find yourself, somebody tosses the belt or whatever. These are as little signs of being respectful towards the art, and then being respectful towards your training partner, shaking hands. I'm huge on knowing everybody's name. Like, I'm huge on that. Everybody, if I roll with you, I need to know your name. How can I roll with you without knowing your name? That's ridiculous. Like, that's not even in my comprehension point. So let alone being an instructor and not knowing your name. So some of these points are important. I'm very traditional about promotions. I think a lot of instructors out there today, disregard the stripes. I think they're huge. I mean, they're a huge motivational factor. I think they're a huge reward factor. That stupid piece of tape brings smile to people's faces. It does. And they're like, oh, dude. And then there's follows like 25 Instagram photos. Look, I got, so,
yeah, that's right. Hey, that first stripe on your white belt is like a legitimation.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not a fresh white belt, bro. I got a stripe.
I know.
All right, that means I know something.
I know. Yeah. It's like, wait, when I get to the blue belt, I'm gonna know everything, everything.
Then they get that, and they're like, "I'm good. I'm good. We're good now."
Yeah. And then they watch a bunch of YouTube and then get blue belt. They quit, because that's what we do.
That's right. That's right. So to kind of tie you into making fun of blue belts, right? Because we're both blue belts, and so it's an easy target for us. But one thing that really we think about quite a bit are blue belt blues, right? Like, people get very discouraged, right? Because you get your blue belt, usually it's the fastest belt that you'll get, right? Because it's like hey, you understand the basics. Hey, you can defend yourself smartly against an attacker. You tap white belts, or you can play with them, or you can kind of show efficiency in the martial art a little bit. But then to get to purple is something completely different, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you get people to fight blue belt blues? Kind of like we were talking about earlier with the white belt, but blue belt blues are probably definitely more of a common thing for people nowadays.
Yeah, I think blue belt is one of the most difficult belts for many individuals out there. And there's several components to it, but the most obvious one is that the blue belt is the first major milestone. It's the first thing. Those stripes become irrelevant because the color of the belt changes. And I often describe it in a way where you have think of a seminar or of a large class, 50, 70 people, whatever it is a large group, and they all white belts, and one blue belt comes in. Do they care about the white belt with 4 stripes? Nope. Nope. That dude
Someone's
almost
coming from
worked
that
the
head.
same amount of time. It doesn't matter because he's not blue. I mean, that's the reality, right? There is a first major milestone, and we have a sense of satisfaction, and you should celebrate that moment. You should be proud of it. But the point is, that's the first milestone, not the last one. The work that's ahead of you, the expectations that are ahead of you, just magnified. And it is hard. And then it doesn't help the fact that blue belt often is considered one of the longest belts in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
To get to the purple belt, people spend 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years to get purple belt. And that's hard because you just came out of this, now I got blue belt. I know everything. Now I can tap everybody to this. God damn it, where's that purple belt coming? And it's, I think, one see this as challenge of jiu-jitsu. There's many conversations saying there should be more belts to create more consistent progression. I've heard those conversations. But at the same time, I do think that is really the beauty about it. That's the beauty of it, is the fact that you get that belt after a year or 2, whatever your instructor feels like it, and you get that blue belt and you achieve that goal, and it's a milestone, but it's also the reminder that hard work is ahead of you. And it's you honestly, this is like you good now to really get smashed, because nobody's going to feel bad for you.
That's right.
That's what I was thinking when you said it. I was like, no, I honestly feel like once you put on the blue belt, like now you're everyone's target.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
The white belts are hungry to submit you because they want that. They want to submit the blue belt, and then the upper belt's like, oh, you finally got that blue. Now I can put it on you.
Oh yeah. Then nobody feels bad for you anymore. No, listen.
No, not at all.
Listen. I often describe this as a Shark Tank. Okay, just white belt has a cage around them. A blue belt does not. Okay, that's the difference. That's the difference.
That's a good way to look at it.
It's so funny that because I saw an Instagram post the other day, and it was all like, like Undertaker standing behind whatever the wrestler is, and it was all like all the other belts and blue belts, and it was all like when you get promoted and you realize those were fake taps.
That's funny.
You know what I mean? It's true though. It's like when I go to a seminar or something like that, a lot of white belts are sponges. They want to take in as much as possible, and a lot of seminars are majority white belt. There's blues and purples and everything like that, but a lot of white belts. And when you put that blue belt on your waist at a seminar, people are like, I'm gonna tap that guy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You just became a target.
Yeah, right. An interesting topic that I've noticed a lot in the jiu-jitsu community too is what are belts bad for the sport? You know what I mean? Like, do people fixate on belts so much that it's bad for the martial art? Like, what is your take on that?
Well, listen, it's difficult not to fixate on them. The way how it's been built, the way how it's being presented right now, it is difficult not to fixate. I mean, that's the bottom line. Okay, we are humans, and we receive the information how it's presented, right? So, it is hard to not to want the next belt because everything is targeted towards that, right? If we stop, like, think about it this way: do belts matter in Nogi?
Nope.
No.
It's still jiu-jitsu. Why doesn't it matter? Why nobody cares?
Because you don't know.
Exactly. That's my point. So, but in a gi, it's part of our uniform, right? So the point, I think, was really important for a lot of the students to remember, to keep in mind, for all of us to keep in mind, is that belt is not a target, it's a representation of our work. And if we look at it from that perspective, everything changes because we no longer chase the belt. The belt is irrelevant. And if I think about it in that way, now I understand why in the beginning everybody told me you're never going to be a black belt, because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I think Hickson said it. Belt takes 2 inches around your ass. Why would you care? You know, why does it really matter? But yet it is so important. And we find ourselves in this predicament of chasing the belts, having this huge satisfaction when we get it, but yet they're really not relevant. You know, so for most of the time, when I have these conversations with my students or students around the whatever, contacting me and talking to me about it, I often say is, focus on your journey. And I know that's easier said than done when everybody around you is flashing oh, I just got a blue belt. Look at that. I just got a blue belt. It's hard. But sooner you acknowledge the fact of the belt, whichever color it is a representation of your work versus a goal that you should be aiming for, easier it's going to be for you to actually do the work, and hopefully you guys will have that opportunity to see that or experience that in the upcoming years once the purple and brown and blacks, gets tied around your waist, and you'll see that, darker it gets, less you care. Like really, less you care. Like one day you're gonna get your black belts around, and then you're gonna I remember this Thomas. We had him on a podcast. He said we won't care, and damn, he was right. He was right.
John says blue belt's the pinnacle. He's
Look,
he's good.
I've honestly come to the conclusion, and you're talking about it, that it's really not the belt. Like it doesn't matter if they have the skill set. They have the skill set. You can get tapped by anyone. Like, I mean, it's true. Like if they got it, they got it. I got a friend that is Rob Can.
Yeah,
he's been Nogi for years. For years, Nogi competes. He's a team out of Washington, so he finally is like, you know what, I'm gonna try a gi on. He puts a gi on, joins a local gym out here in Tacoma, cleans house, goes in, upper belts, doesn't matter. First time he's in a gi. I think he got his blue belt in what, a month and a half.
Yeah, super quick.
Listen,
from gi to blue belt, like it doesn't matter.
So that's a local example, but look at a little bit more national example, like Travis Stevens. He Olympic medalist, phenomenal judoka. He goes to John Danaher and he gets his black belt in a few months.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about controversial decision. But yet, are you are you able to hold back a guy who has so much experience, so much knowledge, and he's nothing but walking encyclopedia? So it's again, it's not a goal for most of us, or shouldn't be for any of us. It is the a reward or a reflection of the hard work that we do, and some of us have more work that we've done in the past, like other martial arts or other sports or other activities. Some of us, honestly, some of us are dumber than the others. I'm dumb as a freaking box of nails. Like I need to I'm just saying, like, I'm not that
100% John.
100% me. 100%.
I love the fact that
I'm like, you gotta do what? How many steps?
I love the fact that one of you put your hand up, but the other one was like,
I mean, we're all friends here. Let's be real.
Yeah, I got no shame in my game.
But listen, some of us are smarter than others. That's the bottom line. That's why on the beginning of this conversation, I was saying that Jiu-Jitsu, I see Jiu-Jitsu more mentally stimulating than physically. I've had professional runners, the people who run for a living, come to the Jiu-Jitsu Academy and they couldn't hang for 5 minutes. I had bodybuilders who can freaking toss me across the room airborne, and thankfully we have padded walls, and they can't hang. I have CrossFit guys who are extremely dynamic, extremely powerful, and they can. I know. Do that again. Are you good? Is the video going to be released too? If so, you need to see this. But it is a skill of troubleshooting, is a skill of mapping things out, is a skill of reacting at a specific time with a specific action based on the circumstances we find ourselves in. So the power is a component of it, but it's not all of it. And that is important to really keep in mind as we go through this, as we explore this, as we challenge ourselves,
So if I feel like we haven't asked like real complex questions for you today, which is like not like I feel kind of bad because we're like wasting
Are you kidding
your
me? You had some
knowledge.
good
I
ones.
think
Yeah, no,
I think
right.
you guys need like
Uh,
a separate bottle of whatever you guys are
Yeah,
drinking
sure.
for that.
But we really try to like build this podcast around. We tell everyone we really try to build this podcast around for the beginner practitioner,
Yeah.
someone that's fresh and into it, just a few years in, because that's our journey right now. Maybe when we get further down the line, we could start asking like, what's your theory of space and like how you should take it and whatnot. But one thing we always try to ask is, what is your one advice for a brand new white belt? Right, that person that's walking in, and you could just put one nugget in their head for them to keep on the entire time through their jiu-jitsu journey. What would it be?
Ask yourself why. That's all. Ask yourself why. Why things work the way you do. Why you're moving the way you do. Why did your instructor ask you to do this? Don't memorize the steps. Steps are useless if you don't understand why. Because your interpretation of the steps that your instructor tells you could be completely different. But the moment you comprehend why you need to do things the way you need to do them, now you can create your own steps, your own circumstances, your own situations. You can troubleshoot on your own. The jiu-jitsu is not cookie cutter, but at the same time could be plug and play in several different situations. And that's really important to keep in mind. So understanding why we do things the way we do, it's literally mind-blowing how quickly you can make yourself successful.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever said have a why, and like maybe they've kind of put it in that way, but not in. I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of your answers today have been remaking me think on my jiu-jitsu journey. To tell you the
Well,
truth,
hopefully,
they've been great
hopefully
answers,
you're not
man.
going to quit.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna actually just go turn my blue belt over.
I won't
again.
let him quit.
So hey, but Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's greatly appreciated. This was a blast. I had so much fun. Your answers, even though you feel like you rambled, I love when guests give long-winded answers or really go into detail, go into the weeds, because the people at home want answers like that, right? They want the nuances of things and how they can perform better and how they can go further in their journey. So we greatly appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for giving us your time. John, you got any more questions, man?
Yeah, I want to know what your drink is.
Oh, yeah. Drink of the day. What's your drink of the day?
I was drinking some whiskey. It's empty now.
Oh, is that gone already?
Yeah.
What kind do you have there? We have peanut butter on our end.
I had VO, Canadian VO.
And it's a whiskey?
Yep.
You got the bottle close to you?
No.
Oh.
Hence why it's empty.
Well, Thomas, thank you so much for your time today, man. It like I said, is greatly appreciated. This was a blast. My face hurts from smiling and laughing so much. But hey, guys at home, thank you guys for listening so much. If you guys want to follow Thomas, where can they find you at?
Instagram is probably the best way. Is the easiest way to find me. I'm everywhere, but Instagram is the easiest. Is my last name, Rozdzynski BJJ. I know spelling, it's terrible. So just look ROZ, and it's gonna come up.
It does.
And I'll have the links to everything, his YouTube page, is everything like that. You want to shout out I know you have a podcast as well. What's your podcast?
Yeah, I mean,
name?
if you guys want to, venture into a little bit more journey-like approach to jiu-jitsu, the ROL Radio is my podcast. We have tons of huge old schoolers on there. We talk to them about philosophy, more of a philosophy jiu-jitsu, their journey, and so on. So if you're interested in that approach, I encourage you to check it out. There's 70+ episodes at this point. And a lot of cool stuff that we talk about, and it's fun. I make fun of my co-host Gary, and which shout out to Gary. Yeah, Gary's Gary. You listen,
guys,
you know what I'm talking about.
He does.
Hey guys, so like I said, everything's gonna be down in the description below, the YouTube page below us. So if you want to follow him on any other social medias, look at his YouTube page and listen to his podcast. It'll all be down below. So, but without further ado, thank you so much once again, and remember,
No oil checks here.
no oil checks here, guys. You have a good night. Thanks.